Hello in the first chapter of my course about Petroff Defense. Today we are going to see some illustrative games in this very solid opening, and I think that we are going to see some typical ideas and some typical chances in this opening for black. Alright, so let's start with a game between Alexei Shirov and Vugar Gashimov. The game took place in 2009 in Poikovsky-Karpov. Alright, so let's move on. e4, e5, knight f3 and knight f6. This is of course the starting position of the Petroff, and white takes on e5. It could be possible to take on e4 immediately for black. There are some variations, some lines. Also, there are some even chessable courses when somebody is making some course about that move. But of course, this is not the subject of our course. We are going to focus here on the move d6, and right now we have a typical Petroff defense. Of course, there are a lot of different possibilities for white, a lot of different approaches. But in this chapter, we are not going to focus on the theory, but let's just focus on the games. Knight f3 here is most common move, and this is also the choice of Alexei Shirov. Knight e4 and d4. We may wonder why not just play d3, but after that move, knight f6, d4, d5, we are reaching the position from the exchange French, which do not guarantee any serious chances for white. d4 is the chance for white because the knight on e4 is a little bit exposed. And of course, this is the main issue in black's position in the Petroff defense. But anyway, as we are going to see, this exposed knight in some lines can be also quite a strong piece. d5, bishop d3, knight c6. As I said, we are not going to focus on the theory, but this is one of the lines of the Petroff defense. Castle kingside, bishop e7, knight c3. This is definitely not the most common move here, but of course this is not a mistake. The move c4 here is of course the most popular, trying to undermine the e4 knight. So knight c3 from Alexei Shirov, bishop f5. It is also possible to take immediately on c3. Both moves are equally good. Rook e1, knight c3, bc3. Right now the pawn structure on queen side is a little bit damaged. Also, the c4 square is under the control of black's pieces. But on the other hand, white got the open file on the b, which of course white can think about that to place the rook on b1 to put some pressure on this open line. Bishop d3, queen d3, castle kingside, c4, and bishop f6. This natural looking move here is not the best choice. This is not the strongest move. I think that dc4, this natural looking move, would be here the best. After, for instance, queen c4, queen d7, bishop f4, trying to put some pressure on the c7 pawn, so bishop d6 from black. Bishop d6, black can even consider here taking with the pawn from cd6, which is also quite good and enough to reach an equality, but queen d6 definitely looks more natural. After d5, knight a5, queen a4, b6. This looks really simple. Black is absolutely fine here. He has no problems at all. He solved already all of his opening problems. Bishop f6 was tried here by the Azeri grandmaster. Bishop a3 from white. Some small chance for white would be here to play the move c3. One of those pawns on the c-file are going to be exchanged anyway, so this move is really useful. After dc4, queen c4, Queen d7, bishop f4, rook f8, bishop g3. This could be slightly better for white, but there is of course nothing more than this little advantage for white. Alright, Alexei Shirov attacked the rook with move bishop a3, dc4, attacking the queen, so there is of course no time to take on f8, queen c4, rook e8, takes, takes. There is absolutely no time for such a move like d5 because right now there is a pin on this long diagonal and the rook on a1 would be lost. So rook e1, queen d7, c3, h6, h3, knight a5, chasing away the queen from this active outpost and also taking the control of the c4 square. Queen d3, rook d8, knight d2, queen a4, attacking this time this bishop on a3, bishop c1 and rook e8, going for some simplifications, after which the position of black should be absolutely fine. You may wonder why not just grab this pawn on a2. This is slightly risky. Let's have a look why. Knight e4, bishop e7, bishop f4. As we can see, this queen on a2 is a little bit out of play, and there are some threats of taking on c7. So right now black has to be very careful. Because even after c6, knight g3, there are some threats on kingside. Anyway, after bishop h4, just to mention that this is the only move which maintains the balance, the position should be still approximately equal. Of course, there is no knight f5 because on f2 would be hanging. Alright, so let's have a look at the move rook e8. This is what was played by Gashimov. And here, of course, there was a chance just to take on e8 and even agree to a draw immediately. But Alexei Shirov declines this possibility and he wants to play for a win with knight e4. Bishop d8, rook e3. Alexei Shirov is, of course, very well known for his fantastic attacking skills, and only when he has a chance he is trying to launch the attack against the king. And this is, of course, the chance for him. But I think that this is not the best decision, and as we are going to see, this will just backfire. b6, rook g3. Still, it was not too late just to go for this equal ending with queen e2. King f8, knight g3, takes, takes, knight c4, bishop f4, and despite this little bit damaged pawn structure and slightly weak light squares on queen side, this position is absolutely equal and white shouldn't have any bigger problems with drawing this position. So Alexei Shirov spotted that possibility, but as I said, he didn't want to make a draw and he wants to play for a win. But rook g3 is already some inaccuracy. Rook e6 from black. If queen c4 here, then queen f3, queen e6, and queen e2. This is some nice tactical resource. Any other move would just simply be losing. Of course, queen e4 is impossible because after rook e3 this would be quite embarrassing because rook on e8 would be simply lost. Rook e7, rook e3, queen c6, queen d3, and this is of course again some equal ending. Rook e6 is a little bit more ambitious and this guarantees right now black some better chances. King h2, and right now this is the right moment just to grab some material and to play queen a2. d5. Let's have a look at the move queen f3. It might look like a little bit dangerous attempt, But in fact, after c6, it is impossible to play queen d5 immediately, because after knight f6, black's queen on d5 would be lost. But c6 is a fine decision. Queen g4, g5. This brave play would secure an edge. After h4, queen d5, right now there is enough time to play this move just to attack this knight on e4. f3, f5, queen h5, and after bishop c7, black is simply winning because this pin is decisive. So as we can see, queen f3 would change nothing. So this is why Shirov tried the move d5. Rook g6, takes, queen d4. As we can see, this active play from Alexei Shirov gave him absolutely nothing. He is right now struggling to reach an equality. c6, again very good move from Vugar Gashimov. After dc6, there is this intermediate and very unpleasant check, bishop c7. g3, queen e6. Queen d7. Of course, this exchanging of the queens are causing only some problems to white, because right now he will be suffering to reach an equal game and to fight for a draw. But any other move, of course, is no better, because this pawn on c6 would be just taken and black will be just a healthy pawn up. Let's have a look how Vugar Gashimov converted his advantage. King f7, here even knight c4, not letting white to play knight d6 was even more precise. Bishop f4, bishop d8. King g2, g5. Bishop c1, king f7. King f3, king e7. After taking that pawn on d7, black will have enough time to start rolling his pawns on queenside. And of course, the win of black would be just a matter of time. King f7 is of course still not a bad move, but this gives some slight chances to white, at least to gain some activity. King e7, knight c8. King d7, knight a7. Despite that the material is right now equal, white will have some troubles with that knight on a7. And also black's king is much more active. So based on that factors, we can say that black is much better still. Bishop e5, king g2. Alexei Shirov is immediately sacrificing that pawn on c3, but to be honest, there is no chance to hold on with that pawn. For instance, if bishop d2, knight c4, bishop e1, knight a3, this is really unpleasant, because right now this threat of playing bishop b8, winning the knight, is really unpleasant. For instance, of course, king g2, bishop b8. So c4, as we can see, white anyway has to give up this pawn. f4, bishop d4, knight b5, bishop f6, and of course, this is a very easy position to play with black pieces. So Shirov is trying to activate his king with king g2. Bishop c3, bishop e3. Again, bishop a3 wouldn't change much, but after knight c6, knight b5, bishop f6, f4. This looks like a slightly better practical chance. At least still there is not much material on the board, so this gives some drawing chances. To be honest, those chances are quite little, but anyway, still there are some hope. Knight e7, king f3, king c6, knight a7, knight d5. This is winning too, but as I said, this looks like a better practical chance for white. Bishop e3 from Shirov, knight c4, hitting this bishop on e3, and also defending the pawn on b6. king f3 and bishop e5. Knight e3 was also pretty simple. Let's have a look. Of course, this bishop is quite active, and this is quite easy win. After bishop c5, king c4, bishop f2, knight b5, king c6. This is really simple win for black. Alright, but bishop e5 is also a decent idea. King e4, bishop b8. Black wants to attack this knight on a7. And only after pushing that knight from a7, Gashimov is exchanging the knight for a bishop. King c6, knight d4, king d5, king d3, bishop e5. This is a really simple position to win. Let's have a look how Gashimov converted his big advantage. King c5, f4, bishop f6. Of course, the plan is really natural looking and really simple. Black wants to push the pawn on the b file as much as possible, and after that, just to go for this kingside pawns. g4, b5, knight e1, b4, knight f3, g5. There are a lot of different ways of winning that position. g5 is one of the possible moves. Bishop g5, of course knight g5, hg5 is totally hopeless, but h4 doesn't help much. Knight d4, king d5, knight f5, bishop f8, g5, takes, king e5, knight d4, bishop c5. After grabbing that pawn on g5, which is of course very easy to do, this position would be absolutely hopeless for white, and this is why Alexei Shirov just resigned. Alright, as we can see in that game, white was clearly over-ambitious, and this cost him the loss of this position, of this game. But anyway, as we saw, black totally had no problems in the opening, and as we can see, this is the typical Petroff game. So let's move on to the second game. This will be a little bit more sharp than the previous one. And the game is between Quezada Perez-Siunieski and Dominguez Perez-Lanier. This was the Cuban Championship final, played in 2016. Let's move on. Knight c f6, knight e5, d6, knight f3, knight e4, d4, d5, bishop d3, knight c6, castle kingside, bishop e7, knight c3 takes. As we can see here, Dominguez tried a little bit different approach, not to play bishop f5, but just to take on c3 immediately, and to put bishop on g4. This is one of the possible plans here in that system. Black is of course pinning this knight on f3 and also developing the light squared bishop. Rook e1 castle, rook b1. As we can see, this is something good after playing bc3 from white. Right now this rook from queenside has some objectives to attack. So black is forced to do something with that pawn from b7, so this is why black played rook b8. h3, bishop h5, bishop f5, and bishop g6. Black would like to exchange the light squared bishops. Just to mention that, of course, this exchange definitely favors black, because as we can see right now, this c4 square can be slightly weak. And also our bishop is, as we can say, a bad bishop, because it is a little bit restricted by his own pawn from d5. So definitely this move, bishop g6, is a very good idea. Queen d3, bishop f5, queen f5, and b5. This is a strange looking move, and also just to mention that it is strange, it is also not so good. This is a too risky decision. Bishop d6 was very natural, and this is the best move here in that position. Black is not afraid of any moves like knight g5 because g6 will always work quite good. So knight e5 looks like a better chance for white. Of course, white wouldn't even think about taking on d5 because this is the poisoned pawn. After bishop h2, king h2, queen d5, black is just winning the full queen. So knight e5, and after that queen c8. This looks like artificial looking move, but in fact it works really good. Here, of course, knight d7 is impossible due to rook d8, and this pin on this queen on f5 is just fatal. But queen d3 is a possible try. After knight e7, c4, queen f5. Black is just going to simplify the position, after which he is going to have zero problems. Takes, and even a knight d7 doesn't cause any troubles, because with that tactics, rook f8, black is not winning, black is not losing an exchange. Of course, rook b8 would be a fatal blunder, because after rook e1, black is just giving a mate in one move. So queen c8 is some possible try. And after knight c6, bc6, rook b3, rook b6, the position is really symmetrical and it is completely equal. Maybe even black has some minimal plus already. So having in mind this variation, b5 is definitely some not the best decision, some very bad idea. Right now, white already is better. White played here the move bishop f4, but I like here even the more dynamic approach, which is the move h4. This would cause some problems to black also. g6, queen h3, h5. It is definitely a good idea to stop the push of this h-pawn. Bishop f4, bishop d6. Knight e5 takes. Bishop c5, rook bd1, and of course this position also looks very good for white. Alright, so bishop f4 was played by Quezada Perez, and as I said, this idea also works quite good. g6, queen d3. Also quite interesting was to still stay with a queen on the king side with queen g4. After bishop d6, rook e2, takes king g7, rook b1, queen d7, h4. Again, this push of the h-pawn can cause some big problems, so black definitely needs to stop that with move h5. But of course, after knight g5, there is no chance to do something with that knight from g5. And this gives white some really good chances. For sure, it is white who is pressing. So queen d3 was played by Quezada. It is still a good move from him. a6. And here it was played by white the move rook e2. Again, this is of course not a mistake, but I would prefer here a little bit more dynamic approach, which is move a4. Right now, the queen side of black is going to collapse. ba4, and here it is a very interesting idea, not taking on a6, but playing rook b8, knight b8, and c4. As we can see, the domination of white is going to be some very serious. Takes, queen a4. Definitely this endgame is much better for white. Also, just let's have a look at this knight on b8. He has to defend this very weak pawn on a6. And of course, white is just much better here. So this was really interesting for white, and as I said, this would give him some very big chances. But still, rook e2 is also a decent option. Bishop d6, queen d2, takes, king g7. It may seem that exchanging the pieces gives some relief to black. Of course, this is not true, because right now the dark squares in black's camp are going to be very weak. And also this firm control of e-file also gives some really good chances to white. Queen d6, queen c1. There is absolutely no need to exchange the queens on d6, because this would only help black. a5. Dominguez is trying to create some counterplay on queen side. h4, but b4 is some serious inaccuracy. Of course, when you have such a position, you are thinking that you have to create some counter chances on queen side, and this is absolutely understandable. But h5 was here absolutely necessary to stop this attack on king side. Even after knight g5, b4, knight e6, this active move and active prospects are really causing some troubles to black. f6, rook e6, queen d7, and queen g5. Of course, this g6 pawn is under some serious pressure, so black has to defend it. Queen f7 and rook e7, winning the queen for 2 rooks. Rook c6 might be also quite a good chance. King h2, queen f4, queen g3, takes, rook f8. Despite that it is black who is sacrificing some material on c7, this gives some drawing chances thanks to that weak pawns on queen side. So rook e7 might be slightly more convincing. Takes, bc3, queen e5, king g8, takes, queen d5. The endgame is, of course, very unpleasant, but still it is defendable for black. After b4, white could have some perfect chances to win the game almost immediately. Queen d2 throws away all of his chances. White should just go for cb4, and after ab4, h5, king g8, h6, rook a8, c3, takes, rook a4, rook e8. Of course, still there is nothing concrete. There are no immediately some real threats. But of course, white will have some constant threats against the black's king, and thanks to that, the position might be already just lost. So this was some perfect chance for white. Instead, queen d2 is definitely too slow. bc3, queen c3, rook b4, and queen e3. Again, white should just go for this move, h5. After queen f6, queen e3, gh5, of course, this is absolutely essential not to let white play h6. Here after c3, rook bb8, knight e5, takes, queen e6, queen f3. Of course, the position is still better for white, but here black's king can feel much safer. He can just hide on h8, and still there are a lot of defensive resources for black. Queen e3 is again a little bit too slow, and after h5, white can forget about pushing the h pawn. c3, rook b6, knight g5, and a4. Again, Dominguez is trying to push and to create some counter chances on queen side. but still white has his chances in the center. And again, Dominguez is making some slip. Queen f6 is definitely not the best move. Queen d7 here was the right decision, of course, just to prevent this deadly threat of knight e6. After queen c2, a3, queen c1, hitting the a3 pawn. Queen d6, g3, rook fb8, rook e3. Again, white is trying to target the f7 pawn. Rook b2, rook f3, rook f8. Of course, white is slightly better here, but nothing terrible for black. But after a mistake from black, again white is not taking his chance. Rook e3 is a move which looks very obvious, just to play rook f3 and also get some time with hitting this queen on f6. Knight d8. It is of course important to defend this f7 pawn. c4, dc4, and here this very smart idea not to take on c4 but to play queen c3. What is that move, this mysterious looking move? Of course, there is no time for black to play, for instance, move like knight e6. Because, for instance, rook f3, knight f4, queen c1. This is, of course, completely lost. Knight d3, rook f6, knight c1, rook b6, cb6, rook c1. White just won the piece. So c5 here is the only chance. But after dc5, queen c3 takes, rook b5, rook c4, knight c6, rook d1. White is just a pawn up in this endgame, and black will have some hard time with fighting for a draw. This was a pretty obvious move and also pretty natural looking, so I cannot understand why Quesada played the move queen c2. Right now, after a3, queen a4, queen d6, black's position is not that bad. g3, rook b2. As we can see, finally black got some serious counterplay on queenside. King g2, rook e2, rook e2, rook b8. Knight h3. Quesada right now wants to transfer the knight to some other square. Knight e7, knight f4, knight f5. Knight d3. As we can see, this long journey of white's knight is going to finish on c5. But after rook b1, it is not the good idea to play this move. Here, white should already think about just equalizing and just making a perpetual check with rook e8. So that after rook a8, queen a8 is already possible. Let's have a look. After rook a2, rook g8, king h7, check. Queen g8, knight f6, king f6, knight e5. The king on f6 feels really safe. There are no serious threats. And on the other hand, there is such a move like knight e3, which could be deadly for white. So right now he is forced just to make a perpetual check. This was one of the possibilities, and if white wants, he can also just return to e2 and just to make this repetition. Knight c5 is quite risky, but Dominguez played a little bit too fast this move knight h4. He should start with move queen d8. Right now white has nothing better than just to retreat to d3 with a knight. Otherwise, of course, knight h4 would be the killer. But anyway, this move works here quite good. But here it is possible to play rook e1 and white is not going to be mated. Queen g5, king h1 takes. Queen d2, queen e8. Queen f2. And definitely this position can be played for a win only with black pieces. But I think that with some precise play it should be defendable for white. Alright, anyway, knight h4, as I said, is a little bit premature. But here Quesada played some absolutely big blunder. Rook e3 is a move which loses on this spot. Still, after queen d7, it would be just a draw. It is very important to take the control of this g4 square. So right now, black's queen cannot make any check. After queen h4, knight e6, king h6, queen f7, black will have just nothing better just to make a perpetual check. There is of course no mate. Queen c1, king d3, queen b1, rook c2, queen d1, rook d2, and this would be just a draw by repetition. So let's have a look how the game ended after the move rook e3. Queen g4, rook g3, queen h4. There is a threat of mate in 1 after queen h1, so rook h3. Queen g4, rook g3. Some repetition, but of course Dominguez spotted his chance and he is not going to repeat. Again, there is a threat of playing queen h1, mate in 1. So white is trying to escape the king. Again, queen e1, king f3, and after rook b2, this position is completely hopeless, and this is why Quesada just resigned. Very unfortunate game from white. He had his good chances. He even had some chances to play for a win, but with some imprecise moves, he threw away all of his winning chances, and at the end of the game he even blundered, so black even won that game. Alright, so this was the chapter with some illustrative games. As we can see, black really had some good chances, and after the opening, in all of the cases, he had some at least equal chances. Alright, so thank you for watching. Goodbye.